While still below the legal limit, a driver operating a CMV with a detectable amount of alcohol in their system will A. Result in an out-of-service order for 2 hours. B. Result in an out-of-service order for 10 hours. C. Result in an out-of-service order for 24 hours. C. Result in an out-of-service order for 24 hours. If you are found to have any detectable amount of alcohol in your system while operating a CMV but your blood alcohol concentration (BAC) is still below the legal limit of 0.04%, you will be put out of service for 24 hours. It is both illegal and dangerous to operate a motor vehicle while under the influence of alcohol. Broken suspension parts? A. Are not a cause for concern. B. Are extremely dangerous. C. Cannot be identified. B. Are extremely dangerous. The suspension system holds up a vehicle and its load while keeping the axles in place. Defects in this system are extremely dangerous. When driving on a long downhill slope, you should brake by A. Only using the brakes. B. Mostly using the brakes and occasionally downshifting. C. Downshifting and then using the brakes. C. Downshifting and then using the brakes. When approaching a long downgrade, you should shift into a lower gear then use proper braking techniques. Using the brakes alone could cause them to overheat and fail. The braking power of the engine, which is maximized by being in a lower gear, will be the principal way of controlling your speed on a downgrade. If there is a cargo fire in a box trailer, A. The trailer doors should be opened. B. The trailer doors should not be opened. C. A large, heavy blanket should be put over the trailer. B. The trailer doors should not be opened. The doors of a trailer should not be opened in the event of a cargo fire, especially if the cargo includes hazardous materials. Opening trailer doors would increase the fire's oxygen supply, potentially causing the fire to increase in size. When taking the on-road driving skills test, A. You do not have to take the test with the type of vehicle for which you want to be licensed. B. You must take the test with the type of vehicle for which you want to be licensed. C. It does not matter which type of vehicle you use to take the test. B. You must take the test with the type of vehicle for which you want to be licensed. CDL skills tests, including the on-road test, must be taken with the type of vehicle for which you want to be licensed. If approaching a railroad crossing that is being approached by a train, you should A. Try to cross the tracks quickly. B. Drive around any lowered gates. C. Stop and wait for the train to pass before beginning across the tracks. C. Stop and wait for the train to pass before beginning across the tracks. Never attempt to beat a train to a railroad crossing. It is very difficult to accurately judge the speed of an approaching train. If you come upon a crossing that is being approached by a train, you must stop and wait for the train to pass before you attempt to cross the tracks. Cargo should be covered. A. To protect people from spillage. B. To hide the materials. C. To make it more difficult to steal. A. To protect people from spillage. You should cover your cargo to protect people from the cargo if it spills, as well as to protect the cargo from the weather. To avoid a hazard, you A. Should always come to a complete stop. B. May need to swerve your vehicle out of the way. C. Should change lanes without looking. B. May need to swerve your vehicle out of the way. Stopping is not always the best way to avoid a hazard. If there is not enough space for you to stop to avoid coming into contact with the hazard, swerving out of the way may be your safest option. When driving, it is important that you A. Develop plans to get out of potentially dangerous situations. B. Enjoy the scenery. C. Turn your head all the way around rather than use mirrors. A. Develop plans to get out of potentially dangerous situations. When driving, you should continually scan the road for possible hazards. Form plans about what you will do if the hazards develop into emergencies. Be sure that your wheel bearing seals are A. Not leaking. B. Shiny. C. Rusted. A. Not leaking. During an inspection, ensure that the wheel bearing seals are not leaking. You should maintain at least fill in the blank of following distance per every 10 feet of your vehicle when you are traveling more slowly than 40 miles per hour. A. 1 second. B. 2 seconds. C. 3 seconds. A. 1 second. At speeds below 40 miles per hour, you should allow at least 1 second of following distance for every 10 feet of your vehicle. Follow the same formula when traveling at faster speeds, then add 1 additional second to your following distance. Remember that larger vehicles require more space to stop than smaller vehicles. If a 5-foot-long item is placed on a flatbed trailer, it must be secured by at least A. 1 tie-down. B. 2 tie-downs. C. 3 tie-downs. B. 2 tie-downs. Cargo that is required to be tied down should be secured by at least 1 tie-down for every 10 feet of cargo length. However, at least 2 tie-downs should be used no matter how small the cargo is. When entering a curve, you should A. Shift into neutral. B. Use the shoulder. C. Downshift. C. Downshift. You should always slow down to a safe speed and shift into a lower gear before entering a curve. When inspecting your vehicle, you should check for all of the following, except A. Too much air pressure in your tires. B. Too little air pressure in your tires. C. A consistent name brand across all of your tires. C. A consistent name brand across all of your tires. During a pre-trip inspection, you should verify that the air pressure is neither too low nor too high in any of your tires. If your brakes fail while you are traveling downhill and there is no available escape ramp, you should A. Keep pumping the brakes. B. Turn the vehicle off. C. Drive into an open field. C. Drive into an open field. If your brakes fail while you are driving downhill, you should first look for an escape ramp to stop your vehicle. If no ramp is available, you should look for an alternative place to bring your vehicle to a stop, such as an open field or side road that flattens out or turns uphill. A driver who stops at a green light could be A. An impaired driver. B. A driver who is color blind. C. A person who does not know the rules of the road. A. An impaired driver. It is important to observe other drivers' actions and identify clues that a person could be driving impaired. Drivers who have had too much to drink, are sleepy, are on drugs, or are ill can present hazards to other drivers. One sign that a driver may be impaired is that they stop in inappropriate places, such as at green traffic lights. Cargo being transported should be checked. A. Only before the trip. B. Before the trip and again within the first 50 miles of the trip. C. Only by the loading personnel. B. Before the trip and again within the first 50 miles of the trip. Cargo should be inspected before beginning a trip within the first 50 miles of the trip and every 3 hours or 150 miles traveled thereafter. Cargo should be inspected every time the driver stops to take a break. The driver of a truck transporting cargo is responsible for the cargo being safely secured throughout the trip. A poor balance of weight in a trailer? A. Can make handling unsafe. B. Improves traction. C. Increases fuel efficiency. A. Can make handling unsafe. Poorly balanced weight in a trailer can make handling unsafe. For example, either too little or too much weight on the front axle can make a vehicle difficult to steer. Weight should be distributed evenly from front to back and from side to side. It should be distributed as low as possible. When operating a vehicle with a dual-air brake system, the driver should A. Let the vehicle warm up before driving to ensure that the fuel reaches the engine. B. Let the air compressor build up a minimum of 100 psi pressure in the primary and secondary systems before driving. C. Begin driving just after the vehicle starts. B. Let the air compressor build up a minimum of 100 psi pressure in the primary and secondary systems before driving. Before driving a vehicle with a dual-air brake system, allow time for the air compressor to build up a minimum of 100 psi pressure in both the primary and secondary systems. Watch the air pressure gauges to monitor the pressure levels. If you remain in neutral for too long while switching gears, A. The vehicle will speed up. B. You may have trouble putting the vehicle into the next gear. C. You may kill the engine. B. You may have trouble putting the vehicle into the next gear. If you remain in neutral for too long while switching gears, you may have difficulty putting the vehicle into the next gear. If this happens, do not try to force the gear shift. Instead, return to neutral, release the clutch, increase the engine speed to match the road speed, and try again. When approaching a railroad crossing, you should A. Rely on warning signals to indicate if a train is approaching. B. Rely on the actions of other motorists to indicate if a train is approaching. C. Not rely solely on warning signals to indicate if a train is approaching. C. Not rely solely on warning signals to indicate if a train is approaching. You should not rely solely upon the presence of warning signals, gates, or flaggers to alert you to the approach of a train. Be especially alert to approaching trains at crossings that are not controlled by gates or signals. At any railroad crossing, you should operate under the assumption that a train is coming. When traveling in heavy traffic, the safest driving speed is A. The posted speed limit. B. The speed of surrounding traffic. C. A speed much slower than the flow of surrounding traffic. B. The speed of surrounding traffic. In heavy traffic, it is safest to match the speed of surrounding vehicles. Vehicles traveling in the same direction at the same speed are unlikely to collide. However, you should not exceed legal speed limits. When driving a 50-foot truck at 50 miles per hour, your minimum following distance should be A. 4 seconds. B. 5 seconds. C. 6 seconds. C. 6 seconds. At speeds below 40 miles per hour, you should allow at least 1 second of following distance for every 10 feet of your vehicle. When traveling at higher speeds, follow the same formula, then add 1 additional second to your following distance. If you are being tailgated while driving a large vehicle, do all of the following, except A. Reduce your speed gradually. B. Increase your following distance. C. Increase your speed. C. Increase your speed. If you find yourself being tailgated by another driver, you should increase your following distance and avoid making quick moves. Increasing your speed may only result in the other driver continuing to tailgate you at a higher speed. Do not turn on your tail lights or flash your brake lights at the other driver. Having weight loaded in a way that creates a high center of gravity? A. Increases the likelihood of a rollover. B. Increases the likelihood that items will fall down. C. Increases the difficulty of unloading the cargo. A. Increases the likelihood of a rollover. Transporting cargo that is loaded with a high center of gravity increases the risk that the transporting vehicle will tip over. Cargo should be loaded with a safe weight distribution. What is the number one cause of death and injury in a work zone? A. Drivers speeding. B. Slow drivers. C. Animals crossing the road. A. Drivers speeding. Speeding is the leading cause of death and injury in work zones. Use extra caution when driving near workers in a work zone. When near a railroad crossing? A. You should expect to hear every approaching train. B. You may not hear a train, even if one is approaching. C. You will hear 2 short blasts of a train's horn if a train is approaching. B. You may not hear a train, even if one is approaching. You should never assume that you will hear an approaching train. The train operator may fail to sound the horn, or the use of a train's horn may be prohibited in a specific area. Even if the train does sound its horn, noise from inside your own vehicle may prevent you from hearing the train until it is dangerously close. Water that has collected on a roadway can cause A. Hydroplaning. B. Acceleration. C. Stopping. A. Hydroplaning. The risk of hydroplaning begins when water has collected on the surface of a road. After 2 violations of any state law regarding handheld mobile phone use? A. You will need to cancel your mobile phone service. B. Your CDL will be disqualified. C. You will be required to drive 10 miles per hour under the posted speed limit for a period of time. B. Your CDL will be disqualified. If you are twice convicted of violating any state law regarding handheld mobile phone use, your CDL will be disqualified. Consequences will become more severe with subsequent violations. Black ice is A. Usually thick. B. Usually thin. C. Not a hazard when driving. B. Usually thin. Black ice is a layer of ice that is thin and clear enough for the road to be visible through it. The surface will look like a wet road. Always be alert to black ice if the road looks wet when the temperature is below freezing. If a load is 10 feet long, it should be secured by a minimum of A. 1 tie down. B. 2 tie downs. C. 3 tie downs. B. 2 tie downs. Cargo should be restrained by at least 1 tie down for every 10 feet of cargo. However, all cargo should have at least 2 tie downs, no matter the size of the cargo. Always perform the steps of a pre-trip inspection in the same order each time because A. You will be less likely to forget something. B. You will have more time to complete the inspection. C. It is required by law. A. You will be less likely to forget something. Completing the steps of a vehicle inspection in the same order before every trip aids in learning what the proper steps are. Additionally, you be less likely to forget a step when going through the checklist in a prescribed order. Which of the following is acceptable if found during a pre-trip inspection? A. Mismatched tire sizes. B. Tread of 3/32 of an inch in the grooves of the front tires. C. Tires manufactured by different makers. C. Tires manufactured by different makers. When inspecting your tires, verify that there is at least 4/32 of an inch of tread depth in every major groove on the front tires, and tread depth of at least 2/32 of an inch on the other tires. Tires on the same vehicle should all be the same size. Do not base your decision to shift gears on A. The speed of your engine (RPM). B. The speed of the road (mph). C. The actions of the vehicle next to you. C. The actions of the vehicle next to you. One way to know when it is time to shift gears is to learn your vehicle's operating RPM range. You should shift up when your engine reaches the top of that range. You can also learn which speeds each gear is good for and shift up based on your speedometer. When completing an offset back-right parking maneuver, you should A. Pull straight forward, then drive straight back. B. Drive straight back, then pull forward to the left. C. Pull straight forward, then back to the right. C. Pull straight forward, then back to the right. If you are asked to complete an offset back-right parking maneuver, you should first pull straight forward, then back up to the right. Your vehicle must be parked completely within the boundaries of the parking space. Your horn should be used to A. Tell other drivers that you are angry. B. Warn other drivers that you are near. C. Frighten other drivers. B. Warn other drivers that you are near. Your vehicle's horn is a tool to warn others of your presence. Because the horn may create danger by startling other drivers, you should use it only if necessary. You are especially likely to encounter strong winds when A. Coming out of tunnels. B. Going into tunnels. C. Driving on shoulders. A. Coming out of tunnels. Strong winds can make it difficult to keep a vehicle in its proper lane. Strong wind can be a particular problem when a vehicle is being driven out of a tunnel. Rims with welding repairs? A. Are not safe to use. B. Are acceptable to be used on tires in the rear of the vehicle. C. Are acceptable to be used if carrying a light load. A. Are not safe to use. Wheels or rims with welding repairs are never safe to use. Which gas would cause concern due to a faulty exhaust system? A. Oxygen. B. Carbon monoxide. C. Nitrogen. B. Carbon monoxide. A leaking exhaust system can introduce carbon monoxide, which is poisonous, into the cab or sleeper berth. A distracted driver? A. Usually follows the rules of the road. B. Usually has slowed perception. C. Is a good person to follow. B. Usually has slowed perception. Distracted drivers perceive hazards on the road more slowly than drivers who are focused, or they do not perceive hazards at all. If convicted of a traffic violation in your personal car? A. You must tell your employer. B. Your CDL will not be affected. C. Law enforcement will tell your employer. A. You must tell your employer. If you are convicted of any traffic violations while driving any vehicle, you must notify your employer within 30 days of the conviction. This rule excludes parking violations. When taking the basic vehicle control skills test, failing to exit your vehicle properly during any exercise will result in A. Failure of only that exercise. B. An extra point against your final score. C. Automatic failure of the basic vehicle control skills test. C. Automatic failure of the basic vehicle control skills test. When exiting your vehicle during the basic vehicle control skills test, you must face the vehicle and maintain 3 points of contact at all times. If your testing vehicle is a bus, you must maintain contact with the handrail. Exiting the vehicle incorrectly may result in automatic failure of the basic control skills test. The parking brake in a newer vehicle is applied by A. Moving a lever to the right. B. Pushing a yellow, diamond-shaped knob. C. Pulling a yellow, diamond-shaped knob. C. Pulling a yellow, diamond-shaped knob. In newer vehicles with air brakes, the parking brake is controlled by a yellow, diamond-shaped knob. The driver should pull the knob outward to apply the parking brakes and push the knob inward to release them. The center of gravity in a trailer should be A. As high as possible. B. As low as possible. C. At the rear of the trailer. B. As low as possible. The weight of cargo in a vehicle should be distributed as low as possible. Having a center of gravity that is too high will increase the risk of a rollover. Shortly after a tire has been changed, you should A. Stop to make sure the lug nuts are still tight. B. Repair the brakes. C. Deflate the tire to 10 psi. A. Stop to make sure the lug nuts are still tight. After a tire has been changed, you should stop a short while later to recheck the tightness of the lug nuts. If your license to operate a personal vehicle is revoked or suspended, A. You can get a hardship license to operate a CMV. B. You cannot get a hardship license to operate a CMV. C. Your CDL will not be affected. B. You cannot get a hardship license to operate a CMV. If your license to operate your personal vehicle is revoked, cancelled, or suspended, you may not obtain a hardship license to operate a CMV. Texting while driving is especially dangerous because A. It is both a mental and physical distraction. B. A message may be upsetting to the driver. C. People like to read and may become too engaged in their phones. A. It is both a mental and physical distraction. Texting while driving is particularly dangerous because it is both a mental and physical distraction to the driver. In addition to diverting a driver's mental attention away from the road, texting requires a person to remove at least one hand from the vehicle's controls. In a vehicle with dual air brakes, a leak in one system. Fill in the blank. The second system. A. Will always affect. B. May not affect. C. Is caused by. B. May not affect. A dual air brake system is made up of two separate air brake systems. If there is an air leak in one system, it may not affect the other. The only way to sober up after consuming alcohol is to A. Take a cold shower. B. Exercise. C. Wait. C. Wait. Most alcohol is removed from the body by the liver, which processes alcohol at a fixed rate. Despite popular belief, techniques like drinking black coffee or taking a cold shower will not accelerate this process. The only thing you can do to become sober after drinking is allow your body the time it needs to eliminate the alcohol from your system. If you are driving at a reduced speed in a construction zone when you spot a construction worker near the road, you should A. Speed up. B. Stay at your current speed. C. Further reduce your speed. C. Further reduce your speed. Always decrease your speed when traveling through a construction area. Slow down even further if there are workers on or near the roadway.